Inside a cozy Tim Hortons in downtown Ottawa, the scent of fresh brewed coffee lingers like a national anthem in vapor form. The early morning buzz hums with quiet warmth. Retirees in plaid jackets, university students hunched over laptops, and red-aproned staff behind the counter cracking smiles while juggling orders. The maple leaf flag dances gently by the window as a TV above the condiment bar blares a hockey game, the commentators narrating a breakaway goal. The bell above the door jingles every few minutes, letting in cold air and more voices. It's Canada in a cup. Diverse, polite, caffeinated. At a booth near the back, Mark Carney, former governor of the Bank of Canada and current Prime Minister, sits with unshakable calm. He is dressed simply, crisp white shirt, rolled sleeves, and a navy blazer folded on the seat beside him. He sips a small black coffee, flipping through a worn notebook filled with scribbled notes and clipped headlines. His demeanor is quiet command, a man used to holding the economic weight of nations without breaking a sweat. Across from him sits Rick Mercer, Canada's favorite political satirist, chuckling mid-story as he polishes off a chocolate-glazed donut. "You know, Mark," Rick says, mouth still half full, "I always thought the Bank of Canada must be a thrilling place. All that paper, and none of it toilet grade." Carney smiles, dry but amused. "Some of it was softer than you'd think," he replies, glancing at his coffee. The two chuckle just as the door swings open. A gust of cold air rushes in, silencing the chatter briefly. Heads turn. Enter Pam Bondi. Her posture is pure courtroom, confidence, shoulders squared, chin tilted just a few degrees above respect. She wears a sharp white trench coat, pearl earrings, and a smirk that would give ice a run for its money. Every step is intentional, her heels clicking like a gavel against the warm linoleum. Behind her trails a stiff-suited man, the U.S. ambassador to Canada, whose face is already tight with nerves. A whisper cuts through the hum of the cafe. "That's Pam Bondi, from Trump's team, right?" She scans the room like it's a courtroom and everyone's already guilty. Then her eyes lock on Carney. She does not blink. Instead, she smiles, a smile that is all teeth and no warmth. Rick Mercer leans into Carney and mutters, "Oh boy, this just got interesting." Carney places his notebook down, straightens slightly, and waits as Bondi approaches. "Prime Minister Carney," she begins, extending a gloved hand. "I hear this is where Canadians come to feel important. Only when Americans visit." Carney replies coolly, shaking her hand. Rick chuckles behind his cup, his eyes twinkling. "Comment if you're here for the drama," he whispers to no one in particular, as if the camera crew from his show is already rolling. Bondi nods once, taking the seat across from Carney without invitation. The ambassador remains standing, awkwardly hovering like a suit that forgot its hanger. The air shifts, warmer in the corners but tense near the booth. The baristas glance nervously. The crowd tilts subtly forward, picking up crumbs of dialogue. Even the hockey commentators seem quieter now. Pam Bondi sets down her designer purse and fixes her gaze on Carney. "Let's get to it," she says, with the crispness of a subpoena. "I'm not here for small talk or small coffee." Rick Mercer grins like a man watching a car chase unfold in slow motion. Pam Bondi leans back in the booth, crossing one leg over the other with practiced elegance. She picks up the laminated Tim Hortons menu and raises a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "No oat milk. Figures," she mutters, a quiet chuckle from a college kid a few tables away. Someone whispers, "Is she serious?" Bondi does not wait to be asked. She jumps in like it is her own press briefing. "You know, Mark," she says, placing the menu flat on the table, "Canada has always struck me as adorable, but let's be honest, you're just America's frozen sidekick, a nice polite backup singer in a world where the U.S. is center stage." Silence. It drops like a tray of Timbits hitting the floor. Carney does not flinch. He sets down his coffee cup gently, adjusting his cuff before speaking. "Pam, here in Canada, we do not build walls. We build bridges. It is how we connect, not how we dominate." Punch, pause, punch. A ripple rolls through the room. A construction worker in a corner booth frowns, folding his newspaper. A woman with a stroller mutters, "That was rude." The college kid, "She really just said that?" Rick Mercer leans forward, theatrically widening his eyes. "Frozen sidekick? Well, if this coffee gets any colder, you two might have to fight over a maple syrup saber." Laughter breaks the tension. Nervous, but welcome. Bondi smirks, brushing. it off like lint. Come on, Rick, I'm just calling it how I see it. Canada's fine for a moose, mittens, and maybe maple. But power, strategy, influence? She clicks her fingers. That belongs south of the border. Rick raises his eyebrows and tilts his head toward Carney, inviting a comeback. Carney breathes in slowly. You know, Pam, I have worked in boardrooms, from Brussels to Beijing, and never once did I need to flash a flag to prove my country's worth. Our influence speaks through consistency, not shockwaves. The words land with a quiet weight. Behind the counter, a Tim Hortons worker whispers to her co-worker. He just politely told her to sit down. Bondi leans in, unfazed. Sure, you're polite, but let us be honest. Every serious geopolitical play still runs through Washington. Even your AI program is waiting on our chips. Carney smiles faintly. While you hoard chips, we build alliances. That is the difference. Another subtle blow, another pause, another ripple in the crowd. Rick raises his hands. Ladies and gentlemen, we are 2 comments away from someone getting dunked in a box of Timbits. Bondi ignores the jab and presses forward. Let me be blunt, Mark. Your soft power strategy, it is a pipe dream. You may play diplomat, but without U.S. backing, Canada folds the second things get tough. A gasp. A man in a Canadian's jersey slams his cup down, muttering, "Fold? We burned your White House once." Carney stays calm. His fingers tap slowly on his cup, then stop. If power is measured only in volume and threats, then perhaps you are right. But leadership, real leadership, knows when to listen, when to respect. Canada does not shout to be heard. We are heard because we do not need to shout. That lands hard. The man in the Canadian's jersey nods. A group of seniors at the window booth exchange approving glances. Rick leans back, clearly enjoying himself. Well, this just turned into a free episode of Canada Roasts the Guest. Should we get the cameras rolling or? Bondi stiffens. Mock me all you want, but the numbers speak for themselves. America's economy towers over yours, and we are only getting stronger. Meanwhile, you are sipping lukewarm coffee and pretending you matter on the world stage. The coffee shop hums, but the warmth has dropped a degree. Carney takes a breath. His tone does not change. Calm, deliberate. Pam, power without humility is noise. And lately there has been a lot of noise coming from Washington. We are not trying to tower over anyone. We are building a nation that stands tall, beside others, not above them. Bondi stares at him, blinking. Rick grins wide. And that's the moment she realized she picked the wrong Tim Hortons. Laughter bubbles up again. In the back, someone whispers, "This is better than playoff hockey." Bondi adjusts her coat, clearly not used to being challenged in a place that smells like cinnamon and pride. The first punches have landed. The audience is alert. The players are locked in. The sparring has begun, and no one is leaving for a refill. Pam Bondi shifts in her seat, now clearly more alert. She adjusts her coat sleeve as if preparing for courtroom crossfire. "Let's talk economics," she says, her tone sharp and cutting. Because all this polite posturing does not change the math. Canada's economy is tethered to ours. Your dollar dips when we sneeze. Your trade moves when we nod. Without the U.S., your entire system is a snow globe. Cute, fragile, and easily shaken. The cafe stiffens. Even the espresso machine behind the counter seems quieter. Rick Mercer raises an eyebrow, leaning into the drama like a man watching a snowball roll toward an avalanche. Carney does not flinch. He calmly sets his cup down, fingers tapping once on the table before he responds. Measured, steady, surgical. "Pam, Canada is many things. Fragile is not one of them. 34% of your crude oil comes from us. That is not sentiment, that is structure. You do not just borrow from us, you rely on us." The crowd stirs. A barista behind the counter drops a spoon into the wash basin, metal clinking sharply in the silence. Bondi smirks, unconvinced. Oil dependency? Cute. We can buy from Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, wherever else has a barrel and a pipeline. Carney tilts his head slightly. Sure, if you want to rebuild your refineries and delay energy supply chains by years, your systems are optimized for Canada's heavy crude, not their light blend. You do not just want our oil. You need it. A soft oof escapes from someone near the back. The man in the Canadian's jersey pumps his fist. Rick throws his arms up like a ref calling a goal. Ladies and gentlemen, that is what we call a double-double burn. Laughter rolls through the cafe. Louder this time, no hesitation. Bondi narrows her eyes. Fine. Let us say oil is a thing. What about manufacturing, tech, defense? You ride our coattails, always have. You get protection from NATO and yet you barely contribute. You piggyback on U.S. growth and cry foul when we demand loyalty. Gasps again. The same woman with the stroller earlier now leans forward. She's got some nerve, she whispers. Carney remains composed, his voice gaining quiet strength. You want loyalty, Pam? Let us talk about trust. Trust was broken the moment the U.S. slapped a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. That was not policy. That was a tantrum. So, we responded with $40 billion in retaliatory tariffs on bourbon, on steel, on everything that matters to your swing states. Now the crowd leans in, fired up. A man near the window taps his phone, already recording. The Tim Hortons manager, standing discreetly at the edge of the shop, crosses his wire arms with a tight-lipped smile. Bondi cuts in. So this is about ego? You are punishing us to make a point? Sounds like you are less about cooperation and more about resentment. Carney's expression hardens, not angry, but resolute. We are about sovereignty. We will trade with Japan, the EU, the UK. We are expanding clean tech partnerships and building AI hubs that will shape the future. That is not resentment. It is resilience. You chose tariffs. We chose alternatives. Applause breaks out. Real, full, earned applause. Rick, clearly delighted, shouts toward the imaginary fourth wall. And here I thought we were just getting donuts. Bondi interrupts the clapping with a scoff. AI hubs? Clean tech? Come on, Mark. Your ambitions are adorable. But the U.S. funds global innovation. You are barely a blip without us. You are building castles in the snow. That stings. The air tightens again. Carney does not miss a beat. Maybe, but even snowflakes, when gathered, form avalanches. And while you invest in division, we are investing in people, in purpose, and in the planet. That is how nations grow, not by fear, but by focus. Another wave of applause. Pam Bondi's smirk falters just enough for the crowd to notice. Rick leans toward his empty cup. I'd get a refill, but I am scared I will miss another quote of the year. Bondi crosses her arms now. Let us be real, Mark. Without Washington behind you, you would be begging Beijing to buy your timber in Tokyo to lease your servers. Your entire economy is a tourist brochure stapled to a maple leaf. A slow exhale from Carney. Let me be real, Pam. We are not begging. We are building. We export more than timber. We export trust. And unlike some nations, we do not undermine our allies to boost our ego. This time the applause is thunderous. The man in the Canadiens jersey stands up and claps slowly like he is watching the final act of a Shakespearean comeback. Rick Mercer clutches his chest dramatically. If I die right now, bury me in a Timmy's, with that line on my tombstone. Bondi opens her mouth again, but the crowd is now fully on Carney's side. Even the ambassador, still standing awkwardly, takes a cautious step back from her seat. Carney does not gloat. He simply picks up his coffee again, takes a slow sip and says, We are not your sidekick, Pam. We are your neighbor. We are not an extension of you. We are our own chapter, and we are still writing it. No one moves. No one speaks. The third act is over, but the flames are just starting to rise. The echo of applause from Carney's last line still lingers as Pam Bondi leans forward, this time not with swagger, but with strategy. Her voice lowers, not condescending, but serious, pointed. That was poetic, Mark, she says smoothly. But poetry doesn't pay the rent. A hush rolls across the cafe again. The energy dips, not into boredom, but into suspense. Even Rick Mercer stops mid-sip. This is the pivot. Let us talk about what really matters to the people sitting in here. Bondi continues, gesturing subtly to the retirees, the students, the workers at the counter. Your government has failed them where it counts. Affordability, shelter, stability. Housing prices in Toronto and Vancouver are a punchline. Inflation is eating up paychecks, faster than you can say double-double. And interest rates, choking the middle class. Some patrons shift uncomfortably in their seats. One man looks away from his phone. A woman in a gray coat lets out a soft sigh. You are not just losing their confidence, Mark, Bondi says, tone colder now. You are eroding their dignity. For the first time, Carney's face tightens. He does not blink, but he stops his hand mid-air as he reaches for his coffee. His jaw clenches, if only slightly. Pam sees it. So does the crowd. And suddenly she smells blood. You talk about AI hubs and trade with Europe, she presses. But there are Canadians in this very city who cannot afford heating, much less a tech degree. They do not care about diplomacy. They care about paying for daycare and not losing their homes. Carney's fingers curl around his coffee cup. His gaze drifts, not away in shame, but in reflection. For a split second he says nothing. The cafe holds its breath. Rick Mercer glances at the crowd, sensing the shift. Even the man in the Canadiens jersey, Carney's biggest fan, nods slowly. Pam pushes the moment. And that is the truth, isn't it? You are a global banker, not a community builder. You are out of touch, too busy attending summits and signing MOUs to see the fire in your own backyard. Another beat. The crowd is not cheering, not booing, just watching. And then, quietly, from the corner booth, an older woman with a cane whispers, "She's not wrong about the rent." Carney looks up. His eyes are not defiant. They are focused, heavy. "You are right," he says, finally breaking the silence. "Housing is broken. Affordability is broken. Trust is cracked. And I take that seriously." The entire cafe stills. It is not what anyone expected. Pam blinks, momentarily off balance. Rick tilts his head. "Wait, he's agreeing?" Carney continues, now more personal. "I have walked into shelters this year. I have sat with families who are making impossible choices, heat or food, rent or medicine. And no, I do not have a magic fix, but I have a plan, and I am not spending my time in London or Davos anymore. I am here on the ground, fighting for people who need it most, not with slogans but with solutions." A few people nod. The man who was earlier recording on his phone shifts to record again. "We are investing in affordable housing projects across 27 municipalities," Carney adds. "We are pouring funds into clean energy to lower bills, into early childhood programs to support working families. We are not perfect, but we are present." Bondi crosses her arms, visibly annoyed. Throwing money at a crisis is not leadership, Mark. It is optics, and your people are tired of waiting. Before Carney can respond, Rick Mercer cuts in, timing it perfectly. Okay, can I just say this is the most aggressive anyone has ever been at a Tim Hortons without a Timbit shortage involved." Laughter bursts out. Tension cracks like thin ice under a boot. Rick raises his hands playfully. "I mean seriously? Canadians arguing about housing and foreign policy in the same booth? What is next? A maple syrup summit with live fact-checkers?" Bondi glares at him, but the moment has shifted again. Carney leans into the reset energy, not to dodge but to reinforce. "Humor is how Canadians survive," he says softly, "but behind every joke is a truth. And the truth is, yes, we need to do better. And we will. Because leadership is not about pretending the pain does not exist. It is about walking through it with the people who feel it most. That is the difference between a headline and a legacy." A barista claps, quietly at first, then others join. The older woman with the cane smiles. Rick slaps the table. He stumbled, he owned it, and he counterpunched with a housing plan. "Mark, my friend, you might just be the first economist to survive a Tim Hortons roast." Pam shifts uncomfortably. She had the high ground, briefly, but Carney's vulnerability turned it into resonance. It is no longer a shouting match. It is a battle of who understands Canada best. The tide is turning again, and this time, the crowd is listening closer than ever. Pam Bondi's smile is gone now. Not just faded, evaporated. Her once controlled tone sharpens into something biting. She leans across the table, no longer pretending to charm or debate. "You can spin your little speeches all you want, Mark," she snaps. "But Canada is still a glorified suburb of the United States. You are background noise in global politics, polite, yes, but irrelevant." The words land with a slap, not just on Carney, but across the entire cafe. The air is no longer tense. It is thick. No one speaks. Even the espresso machine seems to hold its breath. Carney sits upright, unmoved. His fingers stay curled around his coffee cup. Rick Mercer's eyebrows shoot up. Even he does not interrupt this time. Bondi leans further in. "And you," she jabs a finger in Carney's direction, "you are not a leader. You are a glorified globalist with no real power. A banker in a suit playing dress-up as prime minister. You speak softly because you know you have nothing real to say. Silence, but not the polite kind, the dangerous kind, the kind that brews before a storm." Then, from the back, a voice cuts through it, "Get out." It is the man in the Canadiens jersey, standing now, his coffee untouched, his jaw locked. "Get out of our cafe." Bondi turns toward him, stunned. "Excuse me?" Another voice chimes in, this time a woman in a scarf near the fly window. "You do not talk to our Prime Minister like that." A third voice joins, louder now. "You do not talk to our country like that." Pam's eyes widen slightly. Her mouth opens, then shuts. "I am here as a representative. You are not representing us," someone snaps. Rick Mercer finally breaks the tension with a theatrical whisper. "Uh-oh. Timmy's just went DEFCON 1. The barista behind the counter slams a tray down, not in anger, but in firm, deliberate solidarity. "We serve coffee here, not contempt," she says. "You want to shout? Go do it in a press room." Carney remains silent, calm, steady, but sharp. His eyes locked on Bondi, saying more, with that stare, than a dozen speeches. "I came here to be honest," Bondi tries to recover, "to speak truths you do not want to hear." "No," interrupts a senior man at a corner booth. "You came here to insult us." The ambassador, still standing awkwardly off to the side, shifts uncomfortably. His face is tight with tension, eyes flicking toward the door. Pam glances at him, searching for backup. A silent plea. He steps back slightly. "I think," he says carefully, "it may be time to wrap this visit." Pam stares at him like he just betrayed her on live TV. "You are backing him?" "I am backing Canada," he replies, eyes down. And that is it. The final domino tips. Pam pushes herself up from the booth, the chair screeching as it slides across the floor. "This entire country is delusional," she barks, weak, soft, obsessed with symbolism instead of results. "You wave your little flags and act like the world is listening, but no one is. No one cares. America leads, and the rest of you just follow." The room erupts, not in debate but in fury. "Get out. You do not belong here." Go yell into a mirror. Cups slam onto tables. Chairs shift. People stand. Rick Mercer whistles low, and there it is. The full Bondi breakdown, brought to you by the letters F and U, friendly and united, of course. Pam snatches her purse, muttering to herself. The ambassador is already halfway to the door, not waiting for her. The crowd parts, but not politely. She storms past them, her heels stabbing the floor like declarations of war. As she reaches the door, a young staffer, barely 20, says softly, "Your coffee's on us." So as the exit, Pam yanks the door open, nearly tearing it from its hinges, and disappears into the cold. The door slams shut behind her. Silence falls, heavy, beautiful, earned. Then Carney rises slowly and holds up a hand. "Enough. We are Canadians. We do not drown out hate with more of it. We drown it with reason and unity and purpose." A beat. The crowd nods. The woman in the scarf wipes her eyes. Rick Mercer breaks the silence once more. "Well, if that does not deserve a raise in minimum wage and maple syrup, I do not know what does." Laughter, applause. A moment of national catharsis served with caffeine and pride. The tension in the room slowly dissolves like sugar in a hot cup. The last echo of the door slamming behind Pam Bondi fades into the soft hum of the cafe. People stand silently, eyes still locked on the spot where she exited. The atmosphere is not triumphant. It is reflective, charged, unified. Mark Carney remains standing at his booth, his hand gently raised, not in power, but in presence. "That is enough," he says, his voice low but resonant. "We are Canadians. We do not fight with rage. We lead with pride." There is no roar of applause this time. Instead, the words land like warmth, settling deep, not loud. The crowd breathes again. A woman near the counter places a hand over her heart. The man in the Canadian's jersey sits back down, folding his arms, with a quiet nod of approval. The Tim Hortons manager, who had stood firm but silent through it all, offers Carney a small salute with a tilt of his coffee pot. Rick Mercer stretches his arms above his head with a theatrical groan. All that over a coffee. "Welcome to Tim Hortons, folks." The crowd laughs, this time with ease, with release. A collective moment of exhale. A young man near the window, barely out of college, raises his paper cup in the air. "Canada, strong," he says, quietly at first. A second voice repeats it. "Canada strong," and then, like a tide building in perfect rhythm, "Canada strong, Canada strong, Canada strong." The chant fills the cafe, not like a riot, but like a rising tide of pride. Cups are lifted, some in paper, some in travel mugs, some in trembling hands that had just moments ago slammed those very cups in anger. Carney does not smile broadly. He just watches, letting the moment bloom. Rick Mercer finally rises fully, mock bowing. "Ladies, And gentlemen, if you needed a reminder of what unity looks like, this was it. He lifts his own cup and clinks it lightly against Carney's. To maple hearts and iron backbones, the lights of the cafe feel warmer, softer. Someone near the back starts humming the melody of "O Canada," off-key but proud. The visual is simple but powerful. Coffee cups raised, a quiet room united, a prime minister still standing, and a country remembering itself. Carney finally speaks again, quieter than before. Canada is not perfect, but it is principled. It is not the loudest, but it listens the closest. And above all, Canada is not just a place. It is a promise. The room is still. The crowd does not cheer immediately. They feel it first. Then the applause begins, not the kind that rattles windows, the kind that holds meaning, the kind that says, "We get it, we're with you." Rick grins and whispers, "Somebody better write that on the Timmy's wall before it fades." The camera, if one were rolling, would pull back slowly now, zooming out through the fogged-up windows, past the flickering open sign, through the gently falling flakes outside the shop. Inside, Canada is awake, proud, together, and outside, the world keeps spinning. But something important just happened here, not in a palace, not in Parliament, but in a Tim Hortons, over coffee, over conflict, and finally, over connection. By the time the Tim Hortons crew wipes down the tables and the last chant of Canada Strong fades into morning quiet, the rest of the world is already buzzing. CBC News runs its headline before noon. Pam Bondi's Tim Hortons disaster. Diplomacy derails over double-double. The article highlights the moment Bondi called Canada a glorified suburb, and Carney's clapback that followed. "We are not your sidekick, we are your neighbor, and we are still writing our own chapter." The National Post calls it a masterclass in calm. Carney's cool shuts down U.S. provocation. Analysts dissect his delivery frame by frame like it was Olympic fencing. The Washington Post, across the border, takes a sterner tone. Diplomatic breakdown in Ottawa. Pam Bondi sparks outrage in Canada. The article critiques her rhetoric, warning it could further strain already icy trade negotiations. Breitbart, predictably, spins it differently. Pam Bondi schools. Canadian PM in wake of energy weakness. But the piece is overshadowed online by real-time footage from inside the coffee shop, because that is where Rick Mercer comes in. That night, his show opens with a smug grin and a familiar red and white set. Tonight on the Mercer Report, how Pam Bondi got roasted harder than a fresh batch of Tim's dark roast. The episode is titled, "Bondi Burnt by a Double-Double," complete with crowd footage, a replay of Bondi's meltdown, and Rick narrating with tongue-in-cheek commentary like a national sportscaster. Clips go viral within hours. On TikTok, the audio of Carney's line, "Canada is not a place, it is a promise," is set to lo-fi music and looped over scenic drone shots of maple forests and the northern lights. On Twitter, now X, the trending tags are Bondi Breakdown, Carney Clapback, Canada Strong, Never at Tim Hortons. In YouTube comments under Mercer's highlight clip, "She walked into a Timmy's and left in diplomatic shambles. Note to Americans, never insult Canada in a place that serves maple." Carney handled that like a surgeon in a snowstorm. Even Saturday Night Live teases a parody sketch in the upcoming week. Bondi versus Timbit, a Canadian horror story. The media storm swells not because it was a scandal, but because it was so Canadian, polite, proud, but with zero tolerance for disrespect. And Carney's final speech, already being quoted in political classrooms, TikToks, coffee mugs, and bumper stickers. Canada is not just a place, it is a promise. That line is now carved into the national conversation like initials in a sugar maple tree. From Parliament to college dorms to quiet towns in Yukon, people are replaying it. Bondi left with nothing but headlines. Carney left with history. The dust has settled. The steam from the last cup of coffee has cooled. But the story? It is just beginning. What happened inside the Tim Hortons was more than a clash of voices. It was a clash of visions. A foreign political operative came in loud, brash, and ready to dominate. But she left humbled, outmatched. Not by rage, not by force, but by something uniquely Canadian. Conviction, calm, collective pride. Mark Carney did not throw punches. He threw facts. He did not scream. He stood. He did not tear down the guest. He lifted up the nation. So now the question is simple. Did you side with Carney or Bondi? drop A in the comments to stand with Canada. And if you want more real talk, high-drama political showdowns brewed hotter than a Tim's dark roast, hit subscribe and stick around. This is just one chapter. And remember, we are not America's shadow. We are our own light, Canada's light, a quiet flame that does not flicker in the storm. It stands tall, steady, and unbothered. Because when you walk into a Canadian coffee shop and try to shake the ground, you better be ready for the whole country to rise with it.